Being a wargamer has been a wonderful thing, and I can genuinely say that it's enriched my life more than I could ever have imagined. But there are a few things I really wish I'd known earlier. Because wargaming wasn't just going to be a hobby. It was going to change how I relax, how I think, and who my friends are. And honestly, it even saved my mental health on more than one occasion. So here are 5 things that I really wish I'd known when I started my wargaming journey. So, a quick question before we dive in. What do you wish you'd known when you started wargaming? Please drop a line in the comments to let me know. When I first joined a proper grown-up wargames club, I was convinced that everyone there knew everything about every battle, every unit, even the buttons on the uniforms. And I didn't. For a long time, I honestly thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't have the same passion for the minutiae, the detail of wargaming. And I figured if I didn't put the work in and learn everything they knew, I'd never be a real wargamer. I was starting to feel like I was doing the hobby wrong. Like if I hadn't memorised every detail, I hadn't really earned my place at the table. So I tried. I spent hours trawling through Osprey men-at-arms books, desperately trying to absorb the details, when, if I'm honest, I was mostly just looking at the pretty pictures. But what I eventually realised was this: it's my hobby, and if all I want to do is push toy soldiers around the table and have fun, that's absolutely fine. Now, I don't want to take anything away from anyone that is a hardcore military history buff, or players that want deep simulation or highly competitive games, but really that's not really my bag. That's not for me. But for me, wargaming is about having fun with friends while pushing toy soldiers around the table. I sometimes think of wargaming like a mixing desk. You've got sliders for narrative, simulation, competition, fun. Everyone sets them slightly differently. And let's be honest, we all know someone who's got one of those dials cranked up way too high. But hey, who am I to judge? So if your version of wargaming is relaxed, social, and a bit silly sometimes, that's not a lesser way to enjoy the hobby. It's just your way. And mine. Back when I started, the club I went to played a lot of rapid fire. I was always welcome to use other people's armies, but after a while, I figured it was probably time to get one of my own. And that's when the analysis paralysis kicked in, as the board gamers like to call it. I knew I wanted a World War II army in 20mm. But which theatre? Early war or late war? Allied, Axis? I went round in circles for weeks, completely unable to decide. Then, one evening at the club, after listening to me ramble on yet again about which army I should build, Dave finally snapped. He looked at me with, frankly, an impressive level of exasperation and said, "It's just a hobby. Choose the army you want to build." Simple, sage advice. It stuck with me, made my hobby's decisions much easier, and dramatically increased the size of my lead mountain. Now, before we get on to the impact it's had on my mental health, I want to take a second just to say a huge thank you to CMA Creative Solutions for supporting the channel. CMA have been supporting wargaming and modelling industries for over 30 years, and now they're supporting Pursuit. So a big thank you to CMA. Alright, this next one is the big one. After a few years of wargaming, my hobby had become, let's say, a little obsessive. Hugely obsessive. So I decided to go cold turkey. I gave everything away and resolved to stop wargaming altogether. Craziness, I know. At the time I had a young family and a demanding job. And during a particularly stressful period at work, I kept catching myself thinking, I just want to make and paint some Langton Napoleonic ships. After a few years of no wargaming stuff in the house at all, I eventually caved in and ordered a handful of ships. And to my surprise, it genuinely helped my state of mind. Fast forward a few decades, and my wargaming obsession is stronger than ever. But then last year, I hit a wall with burnout at work. I was better at my job than I'd ever been, but the relentless pace of software development just never let up. And for want of a better word, my brain was just fried, cooked. So I made a big change. I started this channel and I stepped away from my day job. And I'm happy to say that I'm doing much better now. Obviously, stopping work was a huge part of my recovery. But the focus and sense of purpose that this hobby and this channel has given me is just as important. Anyway, that's enough of the heavy stuff. Let's get on to something a bit lighter. And that is, it's okay to have unfinished projects. Some people can have a project and stick with it until it's all done before starting the next one. Sadly, that's not me. I'm a true wargaming butterfly, flitting from project to project. No sooner is my first unit of a new project undercoated than I'm starting to eye up the next period, game or scale. This can be very frustrating. For a while it made me feel like a bit of a failure with all those half-done units kicking around and half-done projects unfinished. But then I remembered Dave's sage advice: it's your hobby, do what you want. These days I must say I've really taken that advice to heart. I've never been happier in the hobby. I love making plastic tanks, but rarely get around to painting them. So I have boxes full of assembled tanks that have been a real joy to build, but most of them will never see the wargaming table. The old song may have said, "It's my party and I'll cry if I want to." Well, I say, it's my hobby and I'll just glue if I want to. One of the biggest surprises wargaming has given me has been the friendships. When I first got into the hobby, I honestly thought it would be about the games. I'd turn up, roll some dice, push some toy soldiers around and then go home again. Pleasant, but fairly disposable. What I didn't expect was that some of the people that I met across the table covered in green felt would become proper lifelong friends. These are people I've travelled with, argued with, laughed with and trusted. People who've been there for big moments, funerals, kids, house moves. And what's funny is that wargaming gives you an excuse to spend time together that doesn't feel forced. You're not just meeting up to talk, you're building armies, planning games, sharing half-finished projects, I've got a lot of those, and occasionally taking the mick out of each other's terrible dice rolling. Over time, the games almost become secondary. The real value is the shared time, shared stories, and the sense that you belong to something. I came to wargaming for the toy soldiers, and I stayed for the people. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please check out this video about collaborative wargaming right here. Thank you and good night.